Welcome to our session on teaching and learning online. We currently live in extraordinarily challenging times. Everyone, both children and adults alike, are being forced to do things in a very different way. And this especially applies to teachers. Teachers who are so comfortable in the classroom and do amazing work with their talmidim, with their students, are now forced to take all of their talents, all their knowledge, all their creativity, and their care and passion, and take that to the computer, and somehow are expected to transfer all of that through the screen to their students sitting on the other side. Now, this is really difficult. And in our school in Sydney, Australia, we worked with our teachers in order to help them during this difficult time. So we developed a workshop, the session that I will present now, because we feel that many teachers will be able to benefit from this. And I really hope that you find the information and ideas that we share with you today helpful in your teaching as well. Now, before we actually launch into the session, and before we begin to learn about teaching online, I thought it would be appropriate for us to take a step back and think, why have we moved into chinuch in the first place? But why are we doing this? We're dealing with so much at home right now. We're having to teach at home. Many of you will have your children at home as well. Your spouse may be working from home. And we start to forget, why did we go into teaching in the first place? Why are we in chinuch? So that's a really important place for us to start. So when I think about why I'm in chinuch, these are the reasons that come to mind. And you may have similar or even the same reasons as well. So when I think about why I've gone into chinuch, I think of a number of things. Firstly, I would like to teach. I would like to help students advance in their knowledge, to be able to learn Chumash, to learn Mishnah, to learn Gemara, to learn Kriya, to learn the Parasha. I would like for them to know very important skills. I'd like them to know how to read. I would like for them to know how to learn independently. And I would like for them to be able to learn over a period of time at a much deeper level, beginning with Rashi and then Mefarshim. I would like to encourage the students to be able to improve in their midos tovos, to improve in their character traits, to become better people. And just as important, I want to inspire my talmidim and my talmidos that they should feel the desire to connect with Hashem, to learn His Torah, to do His mitzvahs, and to be passionate about it. Now, these are very lofty goals. There's one important ingredient to make all of that work, and that is the development of strong connection and bond with one's students. If we connect with our students, they feel a relationship with us, they're willing to do anything. When we're inspired, they'll be inspired too. So we come to online learning and we think, how on earth are we supposed to do that? This is too much. This is too difficult. And the truth is, it is difficult. It's extraordinarily difficult. However, it really is not impossible. And there are many tools and there are many ideas out there that you could use that will make it not just an experience of survival, but you can actually enjoy this. You really can enjoy this. Now, when planning this PD, this professional development, there are many ideas that I came across, and I thought that if I just go through them one after the other, it'd be really difficult to remember them and to be able to categorize them. So what I've done is I've thought deeply about all these ideas, and I've grouped them into 3 separate sections. And we'll go through each of them. We'll talk about social presence, the ability to create an environment for students to be able to connect with each other and feel safe with one another. We'll talk about teacher presence, how we plan our lessons, how we deliver the material, how we teach. And then the last area we'll talk about is cognitive presence, the ability to help the students, even though they're on the other side of the screen, to help them maintain their focus on the lesson and to be able to enjoy that experience. So let's jump straight into social presence. Now, many of us, when we move to the classroom, we're going to think, when we move, online, we're going to think, well, I have a great class. In the classroom, we have 20 students, 25 students, 15 students. They get along so well, so we're going to move into the classroom and it's just going to work because they're such good friends. Now, the truth is it doesn't actually work like that. When the students are in the classroom together, they have many opportunities to bond with each other. When there's a transition, they go to the tub to get a book. When they're in lineup, when they're waiting between teachers, there's little bits when they just look at each other or they say something to each other. Those are very important parts of the connection. They feel really close to each other. Some of you with children would have experienced in the couple of weeks before Pesach that when your children were online, they may have felt detached. I know I have a child who is really close with his friends, but with some of them, he tried a Zoom meeting and it just didn't work because it is different. They're not together. And so we can't expect that because we have a great culture in our classroom, in the physical classroom, it's also going to work in the same way in our online classrooms. So as teachers, we actually need to put effort in our online lesson in order to be able to help the students develop this connection. Now, there are a number of ways that you could do it. Now, one way to do it would be to develop norms and expectations with your students. In one of your first lessons or one of your next lessons, you actually talk to the students and say, well, how do you feel online when you're talking? What makes you nervous? What makes you comfortable? What makes you uncomfortable when you have your gallery view, if you're using Zoom and you're talking and you're seeing students do this or that? How does that make you feel? And just have the students start to talk about these things. Students, they start to feel very, very self-conscious because when they're looking at gallery view, they're seeing what everyone else is doing. So they think that their friends are also looking at them. And so they get very self-conscious about that. So start talking about it and just hear what the students have to say. And with that information, develop 2 or 3 points that everyone agrees with that they're going to be careful in order to be able to show respect and a sense of community. That conversation itself is very powerful to help the students feel connected one to the other. The next idea is icebreakers. Find some interesting questions that will help the students share information in a non-threatening way. So for example, you could say, here's today's question. I want you to take a moment and think about a family member, and a family member in your family who's really important to you that you would like to be with. So if you think of your whole family, who's the one family member that you would like to be like? You would like to be like them. And then tell us why. So that forces the student to think who they want to be like, and then they share why. That's a very important bit of information to help the child and their friends and you as their teacher to be able to understand the child. And the very fact that they're sharing that information really helps them to bond. And you can use breakout rooms, and we'll talk about that later. So you can have students sharing one with another or in small groups, and then a few students sharing with the whole class as well. For more icebreakers, you can go check on Google. There are so many ideas that you could use that would help with this. The next idea would be to build in chat times in your lesson. So let's say you begin your lesson, your first lesson at 9 o'clock. So you turn on your screen at 9 o'clock, but then just give 3 minutes for the students just to talk to each other. Let them just talk to each other. And and don't teach. And just see what's going on, do the last minute preparations. And also in the middle of the lesson, let's say you're teaching for an hour. So stop after 30, 35 minutes. It's a long time to stay on the screen. And give the students 2 or 3 minutes just to be able to talk to each other. That's also really powerful. And the last idea in this section is to welcome students when you begin your lesson. So many of you probably, in your physical classroom, you stand by the door, and when the students come inside, the first time that day, you say hello, and you say their name, and you welcome them, say something about them, something that you noticed, personalize the experience. Do the same thing on your Zoom lesson. The students, when they come to your class, you don't really know what's just happened 3 seconds before. They could have just had a shout out with one of their siblings. One of their parents may have told them off for A, B, and C. You, on the other side of the screen, aren't able to connect and help them change the way you'd be able to do that in the classroom, get them to focus on you. So one really powerful way to do that is, good morning, Mendel. I'm so happy to see you. And that boom, that moment can change everything. And now you've got that child. And so I think one of the most important things that you could do is actually welcome each child, say their name, and bring them on board with you. And hopefully that will cancel out whatever happened before you've begun your lesson. Now, all this is really important because students learn well when they feel connected with each other and they feel connected with you as a teacher. It helps them feel safe. And when they feel safe, they feel that then they can learn. That's why I've spoken about this first. The first step in building a successful classroom is building a safe and comfortable and connected classroom. Now, I just want you to take a moment, and this is a screen from my PD, that's why it says breakout room. We're not going to do that, obviously. And take a moment and think about one strategy in your next lesson that you will use to help your students bond with each other and help them bond with you. One of the ideas we discussed, or think about something else, think about your personality, what works for you. One thing that in your next lesson you will do to make an impact on the social presence. Okay, let's now jump into the teacher presence. Now, the first thing I'd like to talk about with regards to the teacher presence is the curriculum. There is so much that we need to teach within every single subject. There's so much information, there's so much skill that we want to be able to impart to our students. But before we begin planning now, we need to take a step back and realize, as much as we're teaching online, if you are coming from a regular school, brick and mortar school, and now teaching online, you're not doing online learning. Your structure is not built for that. More than that, your students would really rather be in the classroom with you. Their parents would rather than be in the classroom with you. And you as a teacher most likely would like to be in the classroom as well. And this creates therefore a very different dynamic. The attention span of the students is very different. The distractions at home are very different. It's not purpose-built. And there are many other distractions going on. So the fact of the matter is, you're not going to be able to teach as much as you would like to. And the most important thing, I believe, is to make that experience as enjoyable as possible for yourself and for the students. And I would suggest that, obviously it depends on your school, but I would suggest the following. Focus on skills and outcomes. Focus on things that you could actually describe. You're not just doing psukim. You're not just doing 10 psukim in a week or 3 psukim. We're not teaching psukim, we're teaching topics. So this week we're learning about Avram and the Malachim. It helps the students at the end of the lesson. Like, what did you learn today? I learned 3 psukim. What does that mean? You want the students to feel, I learned a topic. Now this applies in a regular classroom as well, but especially online. I learned a bit about this and this idea in the halachas of Netilas Yadayim. Be very specific about what you're trying to teach. You're not just teaching material. Make sure that you're teaching a specific topic with a title. Also make sure that you're teaching skills that you can teach online and skills that you can have the students review and consolidate on their own. For example, take Asid in Chumash skills, or take Avar in Chumash skills. Take one section that you know it's really easy to be able to teach, to manage, and then the students can use Kahoot or Quizlet to review. You could use Google Forms, and we'll talk about that later on, to do an assessment. Teach something which is really short, to the point, and that you can actually assess. This does a number of things. It gives you focus, but more than that, it gives the students a sense of purpose. At the end of this experience, students are going to be looking back and thinking, wow, what just happened these past few months? And imagine how amazing it is if they could look back and say, in these past month, the past 6 weeks, I learned Avar. I learned Asid. In younger grades, I learned Gematria, Aleph to Taf Tzadik Tes. something specific that they can look back and say, I did this. That will create a sense of excitement for the students. And it also gives you ability when you're teaching skills, you can see how they're going. So if they're using Quizlet, you can see which students are participating in activities, how well they're doing. You can do a Google form assessment and you can see how well the students did your teaching work? Do you need to change anything? Could you do something better? Is it something that you've done that you could share with another teacher? When you're doing skills-based teaching, you're able to know what's going on, even though you're on the other side of the screen. And together with that, I would suggest as well to have students, and we'll talk about this more later on, with regards to assessments, have them do recordings once every 2 weeks or so on the psukim that they've learned, or on the kriya if they're in the younger grades as well. So you can hear how they're translating the psukim, you can hear how they're reading, and then you can see, is it working, is it not working, and then adapt your teaching the next week. The next area, a really important area, is classroom management. Now, it is a very different dynamic online than in the classroom. And I'm going to talk about classroom management now, and I'll talk about it more as well later on when we talk about the cognitive presence. Now, we spoke before about creating norms and expectations for the students to help them with social presence. Just as important, it's important that you don't take for granted that because you had good control over the class in the classroom, you're also going to have good control over the class over Zoom. And therefore, just like you do in the classroom, it's important in your first lessons, and if you haven't done it yet, to do it in your next lesson, to actually discuss with your class, this is how I would like you to be in the lesson. This is how you should be sitting. This is how you should interact. This is how what you should do in a class discussion. If you have a question, this is how you should ask your question. This is how you should be dressed when you come to class. Go through all of that with the students and then come up with 3 or so rules that you've all worked on together. And then every single day, at the beginning of your lesson with your students, just remind the students, remember, boys or girls, this is how we do A, B, and C in our classroom. And the fact that you've done it together with the class and the fact that you remind them every single day, the first part of your lesson every day, will have a huge impact on your lessons. Now, one really important part of that as well is to describe observable engagement. So in the classroom, there are so many things that you could do to help the students realize that you think they're doing the right thing. On Zoom, it's much harder. So a good thing to do is, let's say you've created an expectation, you want students to look at the camera. So you could say, oh, fantastic, I have Mendel and Gavi are looking at the camera. Thank you so much. Let's say there's a student who really wants to share something, and one of your things, you got to wait your turn. Well done, Rivka. Thank you so much for waiting your turn. Watch the behavior of the students, see what they're doing, and the students who are doing the right thing actually say their names over Zoom, say what they did, and say thank you, acknowledge it. And that will help all the students realize what you're looking for. You could also use an online incentive platform. So there's one program, which you probably know about, is called Dojo. Now, Dojo is where you can give points for students. And what you could do is you could have Dojo, there's an app, and you have Dojo on your phone. So this way you don't have to worry about touching your computer. So when students are doing the right thing, or you want to acknowledge them, you just tap your phone, tap their name, and you're able to give them a point. It's really easy to be able to do. And then at the end of the lesson, you can share screen on your computer and everyone can see how many points they got. You could have free prizes. For example, the students can share a joke. They could do a show and tell me if there's something in the house that they would like to show the class. You could also, in my school, for example, what we're going to do is we're setting up for this term a prize box at school. And because the school building is open and students will be able to go and pick up a prize. They come pick the prize and then they go and take it home. So that's something that you could do as well if that works for you or for your school. And the last area in classroom management in this section is setting up your lesson for success. And this is as simple as making sure that before you begin your lesson, your students have everything that they need. So the first minute, say today, you're gonna need your Chumash workbook, a pencil, rubber, and colored pencils. 60 seconds to get that. You don't wanna begin your lesson without the students having what they need. What will likely happen is if you've taught 5-10 minutes, you're gonna think, okay, let me tell them to get their things now because I'll give them a bit of a break. They get up and they come back down, they'll be refreshed. That could work in theory, but practically, you don't know what's going on the other side of the screen. They could have their sister on the floor next to them. So when they get up, they trip over or they have an argument with their sibling, they come back, they're not gonna be focused, or they get distracted on the way because their parents asked them to do a job. They may not even come back on time. So you wanna make sure that before you begin your lesson, you've told the students what they need to have so you can just jump straight into it and not have to stop your lesson. Sorry. The next area I'd like to talk about is planning. Now, this from the perspective of a Kodesh classroom, sometimes it's really difficult to plan your lessons to the minute. Students ask questions, you have discussion. Online on the Zoom lessons, that doesn't really work. If you want to have a successful Zoom lesson day in, day out, without the students starting to get frustrated after 2 or 3 weeks in, you want to know that the lessons are tight, they're to the point, and that they're engaging and a lot of fun. And if they're not planned to the minute, that will stop after a period of time. My suggestion as well is that the students love predictability. They love to know what's going to be happening. Like, I'm sure many of you who have children, you go on a drive and you're driving to a different city, or it's an hour-long drive or a 2-hour-long drive. After a few minutes in the car, your child asks you, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Children feel uncomfortable when they don't know what's going on, if they don't know how long it's going to take to get from here to there. Adults as well, we also feel uncomfortable if we're not in control, if we don't know how long it's going to take to get from place A to place B. But because we're adults, we get a sense of time, we may have a GPS, we know what we're doing. We can see there's X kilometers or X miles till we get to the exit. But for children, they don't have that knowledge and they don't have that sense. And so therefore they start to feel unsafe when they don't know what's going on. And this applies especially in the classroom. And so it's important, therefore, my suggestion would be to teach let's say you're doing Chumash, to use pretty much the same structure every single day, day in, day out, for 2 weeks at a time. Or every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday like this, and Wednesday and Friday like that. So that students know that this is how we do Chumash, this is how we do Halacha, this is how we do Parsha. It will help them feel in control. And if the students feel in control, they're a lot more engaged with you as the teacher. They feel, I know what's going on. I feel part of this. And therefore, my suggestion would be at the beginning of the week on Monday, or if you start your school on Sunday, it would say, boys or girls, this week we are going to be learning in Chumash, we're learning this topic. And in Dinim, we're learning this topic. And in Kriya, we're learning these skills. If there's another subject that you're teaching, Mishnah Gemara, this is the topic that we're going to be learning, and we're going to be learning skills in this area. Give them the roadmap before you actually begin the journey. That will help them. And then on Wednesday, when you say at the beginning of your day, you should be saying, today we're going to be learning this, this, and this. And the students are thinking, oh, that's right. Milecki told us on Sunday that this is what we're going to be doing during the week. Okay, so that's today. And now when they're going through their Wednesday or any other day of the week, they also feel comfortable because they know what they're doing that day, and it all comes together. And a great way to do this is to actually have typed up, just on a simple Word document, on the Sunday or Monday at the beginning of your week, have all the points and share that with your students. Let them see that, share screen, share that with them. At the beginning of every day, have that on the screen as well. So this way the students can have that sense of control. Another really important area as well is having short timed activities. It's really hard to be able to focus on a screen for a long period of time. I'm looking at the clock now, been going for over 25 minutes. If you're still watching this, you probably feel quite tired. Your eyes are probably feeling watery. For the students as well, it's really difficult to be able to focus for a long period of time. So you want to do something for 5 or 6 minutes, and within the same subject, change it up. And then after 5 or 6 minutes, change it up. Change things as much as possible so that the students are able to maintain their focus. And we'll talk more about ideas that you could use to be able to do that effectively, to not lose their students' focus as you're doing those changes, because you don't want that to happen either. I'm going to go through a whole lot of things really quickly that are just important to know, which you may know already. You want to make sure that when you're setting up your camera, that the camera is at your eye level. Otherwise, if you have the camera down, you have the computer, down, and the screen's facing up, students are looking up your nose. It's not a great look, not very engaging. So you want the camera to be looking straight ahead at you. Next thing is you don't want to be moving around. So when you're teaching the classroom, usually you're going to be walking from side to side. You're going to be moving back and forth. You may be shuckling when you're teaching Mishnah or teaching Chumash. That can be really distracting and can be quite dizzying for the students. You don't want to move around. You want to stay the body should stay as still as possible. At the same time, you need to show enthusiasm. You need to show warmth. And that you need to use your hands for. Use your hands, move your hands around. Use your eyes. Look at the camera and send warmth to the students through your eyes and through your hands and through your tone of voice. Also really important, the students may be a few blocks away or on another side of the city, but you don't have to scream. Sometimes I know some teachers, they in front of the camera and they start yelling and screaming and they're thinking they have to use this extra energy in their voice. Better to actually just talk like with your regular voice, a bit slower for the students. It'll help them understand and follow your teaching and your instructions, but you don't want to raise the tone of your voice. Another aspect to think about is your background. You don't want to have anything behind you that's going to be distracting. If you do have the ability to have a picture of a classroom behind you, or even better, a picture from your classroom behind you, that's even better because it gives the sense of classroom to the students. Another aspect as well is muting the students. Now, it depends on your class, but for most homes, there's a lot of background noises. Parents are at home, they're working. Mom could be in the kitchen washing dishes, water splashing, dishes clanking, babies crying, all kinds of distractions at home. Now, that one distraction for that one child, if he or she is unmuted, is now going to impact on the other 19 students also in the class, and then also on your concentration and focus as a teacher. So in most scenarios, you're going to want to have all the students on mute at all times and not give them the ability to unmute themselves, because they may just do that at whim. But rather you will build into your lesson when you have class discussion that, oh, I see, I would like to ask Mendel, what would you like to share? Or you ask a question. Okay, Mendel, I'm going to unmute you. Unmute Mendel, he gets the answer, mute him, then unmute the next student, then unmute the next student. It does slow down your class, but on the other hand, it speeds it up because you're not going to have to stop for all the other distractions. If you're showing Hebrew, so let's say you're teaching Kriya, you want to make sure that your camera is not mirrored. So if you're using Zoom, there's a function in video settings. All other systems would have that as well, because if you are showing Hebrew and your camera is mirrored, the Hebrew will look the wrong way. So this is going to look right for you because my camera is not mirrored, but usually it's mirrored automatically. So you want to disable that. Another idea, I'm not saying that you should do this, but an idea just to share, if you haven't heard of the idea of a flipped classroom, is that you may want to you may only have a certain amount of time in your live lesson. So you may want to have the students learn, let's say, the Chumash, Psukim before your lesson. So you can send a little video and they watch the video, they learn the translation of the Psukim, and then in your live lesson, you spend time analyzing the pasuk and looking at the Rashi and looking at the Mefarshim on those psukim. So they've done learning before the class, and then you take what they've done and you expand on that. And the last idea in this particular section is, my view is not to give homework. Your school may feel differently, and if that's the position of your school, then obviously that's what you need to do and that's what you need to support. But if possible, if it is your decision, my suggestion would be to not give homework. It's already a really big deal. Children are going to be sitting in front of the computer for a long time. It's going to really be hard for them to focus. The parents are having to stop and help them as well. It'll just cause frustration if after the end of the day, they're going to have to do more work. They're not going to enjoy the experience. And then as teachers, we're not going to be able to take them the distance so that they should enjoy this whole learning experience for the next couple of months or however long this will last. Now, within the area of teacher presence, I think we all know that most of us are going to be teaching in a really different way than we've ever taught before. And you may be using functions that you never used before, but you want to make sure that when you're teaching and you're online and your students are on the other side, you're always giving a sense of confidence and calm. So let's say it's the first day you want to try out breakout rooms. Instead of getting nervous about how it's going to work, maybe it's not going to work, are the students going to do the right thing? Are they going to know what to do? There's so many aspects involved in that. Tell the students, boys or girls, today we're going to try a new thing called breakout rooms. I've never tried this before. The truth is, I don't even know if it's going to work, but let's have fun together. Let's try, let's see what happens. This is what's going to happen. This is what I'd like for you to do, and explain everything. And then do you know what? If it doesn't work, you didn't set a very high expectation. The students know it may not work. And the fact that you didn't set such a high expectation for yourself and for the students, if it doesn't work, you're not going to feel that upset about it. If it doesn't work, you'll say, it's okay. It didn't work this time. I will go get some help. I'll work out what to do for next time. And then just continue with something else. So if you just think about it, it's not a big deal. It's normal to be anxious about doing new things. It's normal when you don't feel in control to start to feel like, oh no, and feel stressed and frustrated, but that's okay. Remember, it's normal. And as long as you walk your students through with what you're trying to do, you'll feel that anxious energy dissipates, and you'll actually be able to be a lot more calm and therefore come across with a lot more confidence. Now, one other aspect I would like to suggest with regards to the teacher presence is record your live lesson and then watch it afterwards. I don't think there's any better way to learn about how you teach and how to improve your teaching or how to strengthen your areas or your good areas than actually watching yourself. Now, sometimes we can feel uncomfortable watching ourselves, but I think it would be a really good idea. Take a couple of lessons, watch yourself and think, oh, that worked really well. Oh, you know what, that didn't work really well. Maybe I can adjust and maybe I can change it. You'll learn so much more from that than watching any PD out. So we're going to skip this exercise and we're going to go straight to the cognitive presence. Now, the cognitive presence, I think, is probably the most difficult aspect of teaching online. The social presence, there's all kind of activities that you could do. The teacher presence, the planning, it's different. And some of the ways you teach is different, still manageable, a lot of tools out there. But the cognitive presence, helping the students to maintain that focus in the lesson, is really hard. In the classroom, you're able to walk over to a student's desk and you tap the desk. You can click your finger. You can sometimes just look at the students. You say their name. There are many things that you can do in the physical classroom to be able to help students stay engaged when you start to see them lose their focus. Unfortunately, all of those areas can't be done in the classroom. You can't say a child's name. It's not really going to work. The child will just feel embarrassed. You can't click your fingers. But there are other ways to help students maintain their focus. And I would like to go through a whole bunch of areas which I feel could be quite useful for you. Now, this is not in any particular order. Number one is to use the gallery view. So if you're using Zoom, the best idea would be to try to get your computer and have a second monitor. so that on your computer, you have your shared screen. So if you're sharing a PowerPoint or you're sharing a video or you're sharing a document or PDF, that's on your computer. And then on your second screen, you have the gallery view of all of your students. Your 25, you can have 25 students shown at one shot. So this way you can watch the students and see who's paying attention, who's not paying attention. And then every so often, you can use the following functions that will help you. So for example, you could use on Zoom, there's the yes and no function. So you can ask like a true and false question. You start to see some of the students are starting to lose their focus. So whatever the topic is, say, okay, boys or girls, we've just been learning this about kashrus, true or false, ikra toffel, this or this food, which you say the bracha first or second, and then they have to answer true or false, and they answer true or false by doing yes or no. And you're able to see, you've got 10 students answer yes or no, but you have 20 students. You say, fantastic, I got 10 responses, great. Oh, we got 12, we got 14. Yes, we got 17, I'm just waiting on 3. Oh, fantastic, we got 18. Oh, and then it's, okay, Mendel, Beryl, what happened to you? Come on, wake up, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fantastic. And that's just the way to just stop, change things, get everyone's focus, and then continue your lesson. So you can just do that. You don't have to really plan that. Plan that, so you have some ideas up your sleeve. But if you haven't planned it in the middle of your lesson, think of something on the spot, and you'll be able to get their attention really, really quickly. You can also ask for a thumbs up. Like if you finished your work, great, click on the thumbs up. And there are a few other options there as well that the students could use. So have a look at that. Over there as well is the hand raise as well. So if students have questions, instead of having to wait or raise their hand, they can just press the blue hand and the hand comes up. So what you're going to want to do is you have gallery view, but you also open up managed participant view. So you can see all of the students, but you can also see their names, and you can see the different emojis and the different functions that they've enabled, so you can focus on that. The other aspect is the chat view. So you're going to want to disable the ability for students to be able to chat privately between themselves, because they can't do that unless you disable that. Use the chat. Have the students ask you questions using the chat. Now, obviously not for UK, pre-1A, year 1, year 2, pushing it, but for sure from year 3 and up, students can write questions in the chat, and then you can get to them at the right time when you're ready. Now, another really important part, and this really brings together the social, teacher, and cognitive presence, is checking in with the students, giving them praise. And when I say praise, it should be specific performance-based praise. Like often the natural thing we'll do is say, great, well done, fantastic work. But that doesn't really mean so much, and it doesn't really help the students to maintain and for sure not improve whatever it is that we just praised. So whenever we give praise, and this is not just online, but also in the classroom as well, but online it's especially important to use, is performance-based praise. So you look at what the students are doing. So let's say you're teaching Chumash skills, and the child, they've done an assessment, Google Forms, the child got 9 out of 10. You say, fantastic work, Beryl. I can see that you worked hard and you got a great result. So link their result to the efforts that they've put in. I noticed that you've been focused and looking at the screen for the entire lesson. That takes a lot of focus. Well done. Look at what the student has done and praise the specific behavior that you're looking for, the behavior that you want that particular student to be able to get better at, and or the behaviors that you want everyone to get better at. So the fact that you've done it to one student everyone can hear will help the entire class better and improve their behavior as well. I just want to just check my notes for a moment. And so some other ideas that you could share with that as well. And I just wrote some notes beforehand. Like from your answer, I can see that you were listening carefully to the class discussion, or I can see that you are working hard. So just try to use like, I can see, I noticed, so that you're specifying the behavior and the efforts of the students. Now you could do this verbally. You could also just send on the chat privately to the student, or if your school allows you to send emails to your students, you could do that as well. A really important aspect as well is to keep track of how often you have a personal connection with each student. So my suggestion would be to have a class roll and divide up the class. Like, it's a lofty goal to expect that every single day you'll connect deeply with every single child. Even in the classroom, that can be very difficult. So have a class roll. And at the end of the lesson, write down, tick off who you said something meaningful to. You may have a class of 20 kids, you may get 5 or 6 or 7. The next day, choose another 7, another 5 or 7. And the next day, choose another 5 or 7. So this way, every 3 days or so, you know that you've said something meaningful to every single student. That will mean the world to them. And then it will become something which they'll look forward to. They'll feel connected. And it will help them. Students are feeling isolated. They're feeling alone at home. And all these little bits of personal connection will really mean the world to them. I would like to spend now a little bit of time to start to bring everything that we've discussed together. Now, I'd like to focus and use an idea called the 8 core building blocks of a lesson. But for Kodesh, I've changed that to 6. So we have direct instruction, modeling, discussion, collaborative tasks, practice and review, and assessment. So I'd like to go through each one of those and just to explain what they are and what this would mean in an online lesson. Now, the students are on the other side of a computer. You're not there to help them. And because of that, we're expecting students, when you're giving them quiet work, let's say, to do, independent work, we're expecting a very high level of self-dependence from the students, which we wouldn't really expect usually in the classroom. So because of that, we have to raise the level of support that we give so that they're better supported to do whatever work we're expecting them to be able to do. So whatever instructions that you would usually give in the classroom, you need to do a better job when you're doing it on Zoom. You need to give more instruction, you need to slow it down, break up the steps even more. You want to give an instruction like 1 step at a time. Students are having to focus on you while blocking out all the other distractions going on in their homes. They also can be getting dizzy from being on the computer for a period of time as well. So you want to slow down your instructions, 1 bit of instructions at a time. It would also really be good when you're giving instruction or when you're explaining a concept to have, for any grade that can read, so from year 2 or so and up, have the basic explanation or the points or the instructions up on the screen as well, so they can see you in the corner, they can hear you, and they can actually read as well. You want to get them from all sides. You want to be able to help them and provide as much support as possible. If we don't do that, the chances are they're not going to be able, a lot of the students won't be able to continue and do the independent work on their own. And another area as well is to use props as much as possible. Giving instruction, when you're teaching an idea, teaching your concept, try to use something in your house in order to be able to, which is exciting, puppets or other props that you may have, just to help engage the students. And you can even use puppets for the older grades as well. They'll think it's funny, and you'll wake them up, and they'll better engage in whatever you're trying to share with them. Then we come to, that's direct instruction. And then we come to modeling. Now, usually in the classroom, you'll have an example. Okay, I want you to do this and this and this in your Chumash Dikduk, or I want you to do this worksheet like that, or you're doing a poster, or you're doing a play, whatever they do, you're asking them to do. You're usually going to give them an example of what they should be doing. Sometimes you'll give an example of what you don't want to see as well. We need to do that on Zoom as well. So if you are giving the students an activity to do like a poster, you want to be able to do a bit of a sketch and share screen and show them, this is what I'm talking about. You give them an idea of what they're working towards. In the classroom, if they're working and they're not doing the right thing, you're revolving around the classroom the entire time. So you're able to say, oh, that's great work, but how about this? How about that? You're able to subtly get them back on track. So we're talking about students who want to do the right thing, but they didn't really understand. In the classroom, it's really easy to get them back on track. But on the computer, it's much harder. So you want to give them, you want to model for them what you want them to do. So if you're going to put them, let's say, in a breakout room, and you want them to do think, pair, share, or some other kind of activity, you want to tell the students very clearly and model for them that student A is going to do this, student B in the breakout room is going to do that, and go through all the steps with them before you actually ask them to do whatever that is. If you want them to do a play as well, model what you made, or a story, model what you want it to actually look like. Now, classroom discussion. Now, classroom discussion in the classroom is an amazing tool, especially in Kodesh, to explore ideas and to create excitement and engagement. And it's not as easy in Zoom or on an online platform, but it's not impossible either. It is quite doable. So before I mentioned the idea of muting and unmuting, in order to be able to have one child speak at a time and not have all the other background noise. Another thing to do is actually discuss with the students and say, boys or girls, we're going to have a classroom discussion. It is going to be different than we have in the classroom. This is how we're going to do it. I will pose a question. You will have an opportunity to be able to engage. Now, usually in the classroom, you can raise your hand. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to do press the blue hand, and I'll see. You're going to use the thumbs up. Whatever you decide works for you, do that. But don't take for granted it's going to work. Think through the process. Think how you would like for your class discussion to look like. Teach the students. Work through it 1 or 2 times through an example of discussion, and then your future discussions will work much better. Also, when we're in the physical presence of people, we usually talk a lot more. Across the computer, it's a lot harder. So therefore, you also want to ask leading or deeper questions when you're having a class discussion to get students to share a little bit more. So a student may share something in maybe 1 or 2 words. So you'll say, fantastic. And then you'll say, but why do you think that? Or why did that happen? Use why or deeper what questions, just in order to make the students think a little bit more, share a little bit more as you go through discussion, just to make it more richer than it would be otherwise. The next thing is collaborative tasks. And the great feature in Zoom is breakout rooms, where you're able to, if you have a class of 20 students, you can put them into 10 groups, 2 students in each group. And they can, let's say, review psukim together, or they can do a collaborative task, think, pair, share. Those who know cake and cooperative learning, the rally robin and other ideas. You can have 4 kids in a group, you can have 5 kids in a group, and you can give them a task and activity and they could do that. So it is an amazing tool. It's an amazing way also to break up the lessons. With regards to breakout rooms, sometimes you'll put kids in a room and they're not going to actually do the right activity. Obviously that's not great, but it's not too bad either. Because if for those 2 or 3 minutes that the students were in a breakout room and they actually spoke with the other students, the 1 or 2 students who were with them in the room, you gave them an opportunity to be able to bond and connect, which is so important and has so many mental health benefits for the students that, you know what, they may not know the pasuk as good as they should, and the other students in the groups may know it better. But in these times of isolation, it's any moment that the students are also able to connect and bond with each other is also really important. So is it what you're looking for? No. Is it the best? No. But is it bad? Not necessarily either. The next area is practice and review. You want to make sure that the important aspects of your curriculum, the skills, they're reviewed and they're practiced. You don't want to just teach them and just move on. So you want to be able to find tools and ways for the students to practice it. So small activities you'll do within your classroom on a day-to-day basis. You could use things like Quizlet, especially if you're doing chumash skills or things like gematria or anything which is like recall. So if you're doing brachas and you have b'diavad, like things related to b'diavad, lechatchila, ikar, tafel, patur, mutur, asur, chayav, whatever, and you want the students to remember terminology or remember translation, you could put that into Quizlet and then they can go and do that and on their own, and they can practice it, and they can go again and again and again. So you want to make sure the students are able to consolidate whatever skills that you're actually teaching them. Assessment, and assessment is really important, and I mentioned assessments earlier on, but I'll just reiterate. Assessments are so important because it helps you keep track of what's going on. and it also creates an opportunity to give the students a win. Look what you've learned this week. In the past week, you learned the first 5, you learned the Yachid of Avar. Fantastic. Now the next 2 weeks, we're going to learn the next 5. And then they can look back and think, look what we've done. Or in the past 3 weeks, I learned 30 words. I learned 25 words. I learned 10 words. Whatever your school system is, whatever your curriculum is, use those assessments and give your students a sense of pride. It'll also help them at the end of this whole situation. They'll be able to look back and say, look what I've done. Their parents will be proud that they've learned something. And you as a teacher will feel accomplished as well. So we spoke before about having short time tasks. And here I'd like to share some ideas, and then we'll start to look at, we'll finish off with looking at some timetable ideas as well. So the first thing that you should really build into your lessons is something called brain breaks. So for those of you who have not heard of brain breaks before, it's really important that in the middle of a lesson, even in a regular classroom, the students have an opportunity to stop and to be able to get up, stretch, and do a bit of some kind of informal and sometimes formal exercise. Something which is really good with regards to brain breaks is to have students cross their midline. So if you put the right hand, the left hand, move it from one side to the other, crossing the brain, it helps kind of like restart the brain. It gives a bit of a refresh so that when they finish the activity, they're able to start again really fresh. So you can have the students standing up, and something simple, you can do jumping jacks. Okay, so now we're going to do gematria up to Chaf. And so Aleph 1, base 2, Gimel 3. So get them up and out of their seats and moving around and integrate the activity with it. Okay, we're now going to do the months of the year, and they're standing up and they take their right hand and they touch their left knee. Okay, so and they're standing up. So it's Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av. There's so many other ideas out there that you could use, but you want to, after half an hour, 40 minutes, get the students to stand up, do something and some kind of exercise and integrate your learning into that as well. They'll have a lot of fun. You'll have fun because you should get up and do it with them as well. And they're learning during that time too. I would also like to suggest whiteboards. And when I say whiteboards, I'm not actually referring to the Zoom whiteboard. I'm talking about to the regular handheld whiteboard. A lot of schools have students use them. Now, if you could somehow have a system in your school where students can come to the school and pick up their whiteboard, that would be amazing, because using Gallery View, you can help the students, the students are able to use their regular whiteboard. It's really hard to, as I've mentioned many times, to focus on the screen. You want to give them an opportunity to look away, rest their eyes, and do something with their bodies so they feel engaged in the lesson. It's really important, I meant to mention earlier on, students do start to feel disconnected. So you want to be able to do things every so often which gets the kids back involved. So whether using, as I mentioned before, those emoji features, the yes, no, or you're doing a brain break, or using the whiteboard. So you'll say, okay, let's say you're learning, I know I keep on saying Avar because that's something which we're focusing on in our curriculum in our school right now. So I want you to take the Shoresh Shamar and write out all the Yachid in Avar. And so they write that down on the whiteboard, and they have to write the translation, and then you do 3, 2, 1, showdown, and they all lift up their board to their camera, and you could, looking at your second monitor, be able to see all of the students that they've done the work. Now, you won't be able to necessarily give one-to-one feedback that you would be able to do in the classroom, but you are able to get the students to stop what they're doing, put using whiteboard marker on a board, changes the whole dynamic of the lesson. It's really endless. There are really endless ways for you to be able to use whiteboards and markers. Really important as well is pen to paper. So they should be using their regular Chumash workbook or Dinim books. And if you don't have that at your school, have them just write and do things in an exercise book or make posters. It's good to just get them to stop looking at the screen and to actually look away and write and put pen to paper. In Zoom, there's a really good feature called polling. Now, you can only use polling if you've set up your meeting using your personal ID. And in your Zoom settings, you're able to set up polls. And in each Zoom session, you can do 25 polls. So you could do multiple choice, and you could do true and false. And you could, let's say, at the beginning of your Chumash lesson, you want to ask a quick question to get everyone engaged. So you'll ask a question about from the day before. So in the classroom, you ask the question, the kids raise their hand, and you take from some of the kids and all the kids, however your system's going to work in that particular day. In the using polling, you can also get everyone engaged, and everyone can give their answer. So that's a function that I suggest that you look into, and it's a good way to begin your lesson, the middle of the lesson, the end of the lesson. Every so often, you just do a poll, and it breaks things up, and that's really, really good. The other aspect is breakout rooms. I mentioned breakout rooms before, and there are so many activities that you could do in breakout rooms that the students can really get involved in, and to help change the dynamic. You can put them into chavrusa. You can have them prepare a pasuk, review a pasuk, prepare a Rashi, review a Rashi. They could do Kriya reading. They could do all kinds of collaborative tasks as well. You can have them prepare like a story. So you have 2 or 3 kids put together. They need to do a story. So you can have 3 people in the story. So they 3 different parts of the story, and kids need to take props from their home. And so they plan that together, somehow connected to, let's say you're teaching Pirkei Avos. You want them to do an example of a good midah. So you have 2 or 3 kids who are the group need to do a different midah. And so they have that time in the breakout room to prepare that. And they come back and they present it. Now, they may do that over a period of days if you don't have enough time in the one day, and then they present on the Thursday or the Friday. There are so many ways that you could use the breakout rooms. And the last aspect here is Quizlet, and I mentioned that before. Usually Quizlet, Kahoot, try to find some kind of online activity that the students could use and integrate it into your lesson. So 50 minutes into the lesson, you say, now I want you all to go to Quizlet or Kahoot and do this and this activity. And they do that for 5, 6, 7 minutes, and then they come back to your lesson. Now, I mentioned this before, but predictability, you want to keep your subjects running in a really similar manner. You may not have the ability to control your timetable to make sure that it's the same subject at the same time every day, but you do have the ability to be able to control how you deliver each subject. And so again, I highly recommend that you keep to a similar structure in each subject to give the students a sense of knowing what's going on. With regards to audio and visual, I've mentioned already a number of times that it's really hard for students to focus for such a long time on the computer. So my suggestion is that, let's say you're saying a story. You've been on the Zoom lesson for half an hour, and now you're saying a story. So you could tell the students, I want you to turn off your camera, leave on your audio. So just listen to the story, but don't watch. Now, some of them may start to lose focus and do other things. You'll have to see but if your class can handle it, let them turn off the video. It'll give their minds a bit of a break. They're only having to listen to you. They don't have to watch you. As well, within your lesson, you'll be giving them independent work to do. So what you should do is tell the students, I'm giving you 8 minutes. In 8 minutes, we're going to continue. In 8 minutes, we're going to review the work. Leave Zoom on, but turn off your video and turn off your sound. Not mute, but turn off your computer sound. So this way, if I say something, you don't hear me. And then you can tell students who need help that they should unmute themselves or raise their hand. Sorry, they'll raise their hand, they can't unmute themselves. They'll raise their hand and you'll help them. But this way, when you're helping those 1 or 2 students, you're not disturbing the other 18 students because they've turned the computer sound off. So think about the audio and visual and how you could stop that every so often just to help the students as well. And one last aspect is to ask your students for feedback. Now, as teachers, we often get really uncomfortable to ask students for their feedback. We're scared about what they're going to say. But be specific and say, boys or girls, today we used breakout rooms. How did that work? Or what worked well? What didn't work well? What do you think we could do differently next time to make it work better? Ask them. They want it to work. Most students want to learn. They want to engage. They want to engage with you. They want to enjoy the experience. So ask them. And you'll be able to use that feedback to better the experience for them the next time. Now, just before we log off, I just thought to bring this all together, I would like to show you an example of a timetable. So in my school, what we've done is, just to try to help the students with their focus, is we've made the lessons into 30-minute lessons. Now, sometimes there'll be a double lesson, so it'll end up being an hour and they'll have a break in the middle. But the idea is that we don't want the students to have to focus on something for too long. So in general, the lessons are for 30 minutes. So here's an example. So let's say your lesson starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. So there are a number of things that you could do. We bring this all together now. So you're trying to create a nice social environment. So you'll welcome each student by name as they come on. Give them a chance to talk amongst each other. Put on share screen the goals for the day and the materials you want them to have that particular day. 3 minutes or so into the lesson, you mute all students and you disable their ability to be able to unmute themselves. You welcome them to the day. You actually share the goals for the day, and you do a quick review of the materials that they need, just to make sure that there's few people who should have been looking and didn't get the materials quickly and get them then, because you always will have those 2 or 3 kids that will apply to. Then you could enable a quick poll, get everyone's focus, get them involved in the learning. Every student involved straight away. You want to do something which is going to get everyone to actually do something. So if you go straight into the psukim or straight into the introduction of the chumash for that day, you won't necessarily get everybody. But if you've done a poll or some kind of activity where every single child also has to actually answer or be involved, much higher chance that you'll be able to maintain their focus through the lesson. Then you obviously do your introduction. Today we're learning the story about this, and we're going to see how Avram and Moshe, the Jewish people, did A, B, and C. Then you, let's say, show a screen share of the new psukim for the day. And then you'll tell the students, okay, please take out your whiteboards. And in this pasuk, there are 9 shirashim. I want you to find 6. We've been learning asid, and there are 5 asid examples. I want you to find 3. I want you to find 4 prefixes, and giving you 2 minutes starting now. And they go do that. And then you say, okay, 3, 2, 1, showdown. They lift it up and they show you their work. And then you can use performance-based praise. Well done, Mendel. I noticed that this or that. Oh, fantastic, Rivka, you got it all right. I see that you must have been studying your whatever. So we started to bring this all together. Then go straight to the psukim. You can leave it shared screen, or you can have the students have it in front of them. Depends on your class. You may want to send home a translation as well for those students who need the translation. Also, if they don't pick it up, then they can, when they do Chazara, they have a translation as well. And at this point, because it's online, even if you don't usually do like the chants and the recall learning, I would suggest doing it on Zoom after you've given them an opportunity to be able to look at the pasuk on their own. And you do Hebrew, English. They repeat after you. Say the English, they say the Hebrew. They say the Hebrew. You say the Hebrew. They say the English. And then everyone does it together. Now, there's other ways you could do that, but that's the simple way to do it. Then you'd go in a breakout room for a few minutes, and the students would have an opportunity to practice with each other. And then you start to do some independent work in the workbook. And then it's already end of your lesson. Now, with regards to the workbook, it's obviously up to you and your particular school. But again, the most important thing is that you and your students enjoy the experience. You know, if they don't complete all the work in their workbook, it's not such a big deal. But if they finish that chumash lesson, and wow, we learned 2 psukim, we learned about this, we learned about that, it was so much fun. That changes everything. They're going to want to engage with you the next day. But if after learning, they're going to have to start filling in worksheets and all kinds of other things which aren't very exciting, especially because you're not there in the same way to be able to support them with it, it'll be hard to maintain the students' engagement over the next number of months in your lessons. So less is more. Most important thing, the kids learn, have fun, and that you have fun as well. Another really quick example, let's say you're doing a dinner. So the same thing, you have a welcome, and you mute the students 3 minutes into the lesson, you introduce your topic. Today we're learning about the mitzvah of this. We're going to learn the key concept of Ikar Tafel. And once you have that information, you're going to know which bracha to say in this situation. Then really good thing to do in dinim would be to share a story, share the significance about that particular mitzvah. So if you're teaching about Netilas Yadayim, say a story about Netilas Yadayim that, oh wow, Netilas Yadayim is really important. Look what happened. Famous story of let's say the soldier in the Korean War. Well, look what Netilas Yadayim did for that person, that soldier. This is exciting. I want to know more about this. So try to find an exciting story, for tzaddikim, related to whatever topic that you are teaching. Then unpack the story. Why do you think this happened? Why did that happen? And there are different ways that you could do that, either together as a class, breakout rooms as well. And then you want to actually teach the topics. And when you're teaching, it's really important. Sometimes you'll use full screen and use of yourself, and that's okay if you have props, and puppets, or other items that you're using to explain things. You're doing brachos, that's really easy. If you're doing Hilchos Shabbos, you may have some practical examples. Otherwise, you probably want to have a PowerPoint so they can actually see pictures or see what you're teaching as well. Then you'll give them independent work to do, and there's so many things that they could do. You may have a workbook, a poster, a brochure. They can do breakout rooms, as I mentioned before. They can do skits. They can write a story. There's so many other things that they could do during that period of time. And then boom, your lesson's over. So even if your lesson is 40 minutes or 45 minutes, you'll have more time for them to do independent work. Unfortunately, in our setup of 30 minutes, there's not much time to do the independent work. So if your lessons are a bit longer, you'll just have more time for the independent work, which is a good thing if you do have the time for that. So I hope you found this session useful and helpful. If you would like to know more, I'm more than happy for you to be able to contact me. And my email address is rabbi.milecki@ktc.nsw.edu.au. And I will quickly put that up on the screen in case you would like to take that down. And I'm more than happy to send you other resources to be able to help you expand your knowledge and skill in this area. Just want to wish you Hatzlacha Rava in your very important work in your Avodas HaKodesh. It's really important work. It is hard, but it actually can be enjoyable. So the most important thing is enjoy it, connect with your students, connect with your learning, and just have fun. And Hatzlacha Rava.